what will happen over the next half hour is that we can have, well, actually about an hour, that we can have some fun together thinking about how one creates, bam, how one creates that whole greater than the sum of the parts, that magic, that muscle, that mojo that just keeps on trucking within organizations. And I'm thrilled to be talking with you about this because nobody ever asked me to talk about this. Ever. It was such a great thing to be asked to come here, because usually people ask me to talk about what you talk about, you know, our organizations and how we do our work. And nobody ever asks me to talk about how you create the organization that creates the creation, that creates the next creation, that creates change and keeps on creating change. And so this was a fun thing for me to step back and think about so that I could share it with you. So I'm going to start, since this is a session about continuous evolution, improvement, learning, how you create the learning organization, I'm going to start by asking you a question, okay? I had a boss once, real story. I had a boss once whose favorite saying was, "How come I'm the only one with any good ideas around here?" Real story. How come I'm the only one with any good ideas around here? So, question to you. When you hear somebody, your leader, saying that, what is your reaction? What's your reaction? What does it make you think?
You don't want to hear our ideas.
You don't want to hear my damn ideas. Go look on Craigslist, yes. What else does it make you think?
All the ideas I gave up to this point sucked.
Yeah, all the ideas I gave up to this point sucked. What else? What else does it make you think? Excuse me, John?
He's in love with his own ideas.
He's in love with his own ideas. It's a turn-off. And, you know, you have somebody sitting at the top. In this case, it was a $285 million organization. You have somebody, and I was the head of strategy who reported to him for this organization. It was an organization where it was very, very much buy stuff and build stuff bigger by buying stuff. It was a healthcare organization. It grew by acquiring things. And what do you think happened to that organization over time? It lost targets for acquisition, didn't have other things to acquire, so it stopped getting bigger by acquisition. True. What else happened to it? How much new stuff do you think it invented? Very little. How much, when it got hit with downturns, how did it deal with them? What do you think? What was the way they cut costs in the organization? Across the board, 5% across the board, everybody eliminate 5%. Bad stuff gets eliminated, good stuff gets eliminated, 5%, everything gets eliminated by 5%. You know? Because nobody had any good ideas about how to cut. And there's one man at the top, and he's sitting up there saying, I'm the only one with good ideas, and I need 5%, so you all cut 5%. And what happened to that man? He ultimately got cut, too. And I'm still here. Today we want to talk about how you create that organization that is the antithesis of that. How come I'm the only one with good ideas around here? And instead talk about how you create the organization that's just the opposite, where if you have 1,000 employees, you have 120 IQ points per employee, or, you know, if it's a really healthy organization, 120 IQ points. And it's not just the 120 IQ points that's running everything, but it's 1,000 times 120 IQ points. And if you have 1,000, 5,000, 6,000 stakeholders, maybe you have IQ points there. And if you're serving 1,000 people who have life and wisdom, maybe there are 120 IQ points there, times 1,000. And that could be very messy, right? Could be it could be an ostrich rodeo, could be very, very messy, or it could be something really, really powerful, And how do you create that powerful thing? So I'm going to start off with saying to you that these are just my ideas, and yeah, we could talk about articles and things that they're based on, but these are primarily my ideas. So first of all, the first thing I want to say with you is that think about being in the business of creating change in and by all levels of your organization. So in and by person, the people you're serving, the people on the ground, the programs they're working in, the organizations running those programs, the larger community systems and the world that that organization is working in. And think about inventing change at all those levels. And not at all those levels, but by all those levels. 120 IQ points everywhere. Everywhere. 100 IQ points, 120 IQ points if you're picking them even better. How do you do that by everywhere? And the answer I'm going to give you is you must be the change you wish to see in the world. If you want change in your participants, if you want your participants to change and to grow, if you want your participants to unfold and be their best and biggest selves, then your staff have to unfold, and your managers have to unfold, and your leaders have to unfold, and your community has to unfold. And it's possible. It's absolutely possible to do it. And in order to do it, you have to have a shared framework. There has to be a shared framework that everybody agrees is the shared framework of change. Everybody in all those places has to know what you believe creates the change. They have to know what it is, how that change happens, why it happens that way. They have to know it at every single level. The participants have to know it, and the staff have to know it, and the leaders have to know it, and the funders and politicians and the community has to know it. And directions are what my old boss gave. How come I'm the only one with any good ideas around here? And you do it my way. And the learning organization is given direction, not directions. It's given vision. It's given a framework in which everyone can see the pathway to the change that you want to be in the world. Now, the change that we create in my organization is helping low-income women and families reach economic independence. It's change. It's starting in poverty and ending up with a family-sustaining wage and $10,000 saved in the bank and the education on the process that takes you to get there, and it's years of work and years of partnership and years of journey together to get to those outcomes. And this is the framework that we use. I'm sorry that this is it's so hard to see in here, but this is the theory of change. We call it the bridge to self-sufficiency. And basically what I'll tell you is we have a theory, and the theory says that for us to help low-income single moms, subsidy-dependent single moms get to economic independence, a job that pays $45,000 to $50,000 a year with money saved in the bank, and the skill sets and the place in their lives where they can actually support their families, you have to get 5 cylinders firing at the same time. And those 5 cylinders are their family stability, their well-being, their money management, their career management, and their educational attainment. Because we believe that getting out of poverty in today's world means that you have to get education beyond high school, and that for low-income working moms, that means you have to juggle a lot of things at the same time for a long time and optimize decision-making for a long time in order to be able to get to that place that you can be economically independent. So this framework is basically set up where at the bottom you can be at a very high risk level and you work your way up the pillars, and if any one of those pillars isn't optimized, the whole thing falls down. Rule number 3. Set goals for, reflect on, and track shared change at all levels. What does this mean? If you're in the business of creating change, if you're going to be an organization that is just saying, okay, nothing is going to be exactly the same tomorrow as it is today because I'm going to be better. I'm going to be better. So it's not going to be the same. My families are going to be better. My staff are going to be better. I'm going to be better. My board is going to be better. My politicians are going to be better. My funders are going to be better. My volunteers are going to be better tomorrow than they were today. Because in that way, we can create more change. And that way, we can harness 100, 120 IQ points, maybe with the politicians, in every direction. Just kidding about the politicians. Creating change means that you have to start knowing where you're starting. And you have to know where you want to go, what you want the change to be, that you're going to be in the world. In my case, it's low-income moms reaching that family-sustaining job. We know what it takes. We have an index that measures what it takes based on your family size and even down to the town that you live in and the number of kids you have and how old those kids are. We know what that takes. And we know what they're earning in the beginning. And we know what their education levels are, and we know what their medical histories are, and we know what their family challenges are, and we know what their depression is, and we know whether they're homeless or not, and we know whether they have childcare. So we know a lot about where they're starting, and we know where we want them to go. The process of creating change is inherently one where you have to aspire. You have to say, this is where I want to be. This is how far I want to go. And as you embark upon that journey as an organization, as a staff person, as a participant, as a stakeholder, a funder, as you embark upon that journey, you have to say, I'm starting here and this is where I want to be, and goals have to be set at every single level. We don't just set goals for our participants in my organization. You know, we do. The participants set goals. They set goals for multiple years out. They set goals every 6 months. They set goals for the next step and the next step. But they aren't the only ones setting goals. Their programs are setting goals. This year I will get 50 women over. Next year I will get 60 women over. Next year I will get this much income gain. This year we will get this much education gain. Next year we will get that much education gain. And that gets scrolled up and up and up to the systems level and beyond. And we all set goals. And we all measure ourselves against those goals. And we all track the progress that we're making at all levels, because it has to all be aligned together in the same framework, measuring the same things, and everybody has to be accountable at all levels so that we can learn together and make it better, so that we can talk about the same things, so we can find mistakes in the same things, so we can evolve the same things. So setting goals isn't just for participants. You know, one of the things when I was growing up in Boston and I was in junior high school and high school, Mayor Lindsay was the mayor of New York. You know, when you're a kid in the 60s, little kid in the 60s, an older kid in the 70s, and you're seeing that inspiring leader. He had as the head of HHS at that time a person by the name of Gordon Chase. And Gordon Chase was an amazing leader. He dove in and dealt with healthcare issues in New York that had never been dealt with before. And Gordon's question that he organized all of the health services in New York around to produce the most amazing outcomes that the city had seen in decades was, how many people did we make healthy today? He turned to his staff and every day said, how many people did we make healthy today? You have to ask the same questions and measure the same things in order to be able to unfold and have shared learning about what works and doesn't work. So we measure. The women that we serve are measured and measure themselves on this bridge to self-sufficiency. Where am I when I start? And we measure the gains that they make over time. And at the program level, we measure all the women's gains together in that program. And we do it month in, month out. How are we doing? How are we doing? You know, when you get to the point that outcomes are not something that your staff say you give to funders at the end of a program because you have to and they're a pain in the ass, and go to saying entry-level, front-level staff, when am I going to get my reports? And where's my data? And where are my numbers? I need to know my numbers. How are my women doing? Are we working? Is that new idea that we had working? And the ideas, when you share the framework, the ideas come from everywhere, everywhere. Frontline staff, when you share with them how it is that women and families are challenged by the stresses of poverty and they have a hard time making executive decisions, and you give them framework around the challenges of stress in poverty, and you give that to frontline staff. Frontline staff say, I can get more numbers by putting bins in our homeless shelter that allow families to organize their belongings. They'll get out of the apartments faster in the morning, and they'll be ready for school, and they won't miss as much work if I can give them trapper keepers, and I can help settle down kids at night in the shelter and give moms time to study and help them figure out how to improve their parenting skills. If we have a cookies and milk bedtime story session, if we do that and we model serve and return in that bedtime story session, those moms are going to see what that does for those kids, and they're going to see the quiet that happens and settles over them, and they're going to have the time that quiet gave them. And that's frontline staff coming up with those ideas and saying, where are my numbers? And did those ideas matter? And did I change something within that framework? And the families themselves will say, you know, if you allowed us to come together and buy computers together in a group, and you would help us do that, we could buy them cheaper, and we could get somebody to install the software and train our group on how to use the software. And if you spent your budget money just slightly different and we could do that, we would be doing better in school. And so you try it, because there are 120 IQ points everywhere. Everywhere. So you measure at the program level. And you measure at the organization level. And you can't see this very well, I see, but you measure at the organization level to see how many people did we get income gains from this year, and how many made it through and got more credits in school, and how many saved how much more money. And when you have those IQ points harnessed at every level, what starts to happen is 80% of families in shelter, working and or going to school 24 hours a week within 6 to 12 months of entering shelter. And what happens is women graduating from community college in half the time and at twice the rate of traditional community college students who don't have children and aren't living in shelter. And savings, and debt reduction, and change, with, instead of just a few families, hundreds of families at a time. And what happens is, if you have a framework that makes sense to you, and you're using a framework and tools, and others start to hear about it, you guys know this. They come to you and they say, how are you doing this? What's your secret? How is this happening? And then organizations, when they want to replicate, they will say, okay, we'll grow this model and we'll duplicate it, we'll replicate it and see if it's effective. But the interesting thing is that, you know, if you let the frameworks go, if you give them to other people, and you let them play around with those frameworks, a la open sourcing, 120 IQ points. If you let them go, they will find your mistakes for you. They will find the things that work for them too. They will share and they will learn together. And suddenly our frameworks that I never ever could have gotten into 20 cities, Melbourne, Australia, Halifax, Nova Scotia, Detroit, Rochester, San Francisco, Seattle. They never would have been there if I had had to find the wherewithal to get them all there. But if you let the ideas and the frameworks go, other people will decide what is useful to them. And will start to prove your case and find your weaknesses and help you be better faster. Open sourcing ideas, letting some ideas go. And the interesting thing is we didn't even plan to, but this week one of our partners in Detroit who's using these tools said, I love being part of this movement. And I said, who the hell started out to have a movement? We didn't start out to have a movement. We just wanted to learn faster. Learn faster by sharing. You got to celebrate and reward the goals that are achieved. Joy is important. Joy is important. You got to celebrate the goals that are achieved. You got to measure them and keep on tracking them, and outcomes aren't just for funders anymore, and data is a tool that lets you know whether you're on track or you're not. And when you achieve things, you got to stop and look, because it's easy to blast past those moments. It's easy for our participants to blast past those moments. It's important for all of us to stop and say, hey, change happened. Bam, change happened. Because only when we recognize it can we sort of internalize it as another set point and move forward from there. We're remeasuring. We're saying we got further, and we're starting from there as our start point, and the change is going on. Measuring at the person level, measuring at the program level. We have in my organization something we call bragging boards. It's the bridge to self-sufficiency that I just showed you, where every program gets these big bragging boards that say, what's the change that you made? And they hang them up in all the different areas of the organization, and it's like, I made this happen. I made it. My bedtime stories made it, and my organizational bins made it, and I made it, and we made it, and the women made it together. The last thing I'll share with you is that it's very, very important to invest in growing people's skills and capacities at all levels. If you're gonna do anything, trust people's minds to unfold and invest in giving them the tools to unfold. Spend time sharing the learning with all levels of the organization. It's not just the person at the top who has the good ideas, but you have to share the frameworks and what drives them and the theories behind them and the science and the tools and the whys and wherefores at all levels. We do a lot of our work based on brain science, on new brain science discoveries. And the interesting thing is the women we serve asked us to come talk with them about this new brain science and how they can use it. And you would say, oh, they wouldn't want to know that stuff. Frontline staff. You know, I had Jack Schoenkoff at the Harvard Center on the Developing Child, one of my partners. I had him say to me, it's pointless to tell frontline workers about this brain science stuff. You just have to teach them how to do the work better. But if you want to talk with them about all the theories, it doesn't influence things. It doesn't affect things. It's not useful. And the answer is, of course, as you all know, that's just patently ridiculous. You have to explain the reasons why things are being done the way they're being done for people to add their 100, 120 IQ points and take it further. And so growing people, stretching, and helping to give them the tools to actually grow themselves is critical. You want to invest in participants' capacities to create their own change. And I've heard a lot of you talking about this. You know, this idea of motivational interviewing, where it's so important not to be telling people, do this today and do that tomorrow. That's just like my old boss. And instead, what you're looking for is the capacity to help give the tools to people that would help them make better decisions, acquire new skills and learning, and the hunger to do it over and over and over again, because it's so damn cool, and we all know it. It's why we're in this work. It's what keeps all of us at it, is this opportunity to innovate, to make something better. And it's wired into everyone to want to do that. Invest in staff. I'm giving you some examples so it isn't just patter, so you understand how we invest in staff. I have 120 staff, 140 staff total, 120 FTEs. And out of those 120 FTEs, in May, we had 8 new college degrees on my staff. Because of a tuition assistance program, because of flex time, because of what we do to encourage people to go to school while they're working, because we encourage our women to go to school while they're working. And so with our staff, I do something called Mentoring Mondays. Once a month on Monday, I sit in one of our program locations looking like Lucy, forlorn, 5 cents advice, sitting there with my lunch, waiting to see if somebody will show up, to talk with any staff who want to talk about how they can get ahead in their jobs, how they can get more education, how they can cultivate skills that would enable them to be promoted or go into another field, or who they can connect to, or how they can do something to grow their own skill sets, their careers, their own opportunity. We put goals, set goals, drawn in sand, in the dirt, into our board-blessed annual goals, to have at least 40% of the jobs that pay $36,000 a year above filled from within the organization. Goals are not just for my clients, they're for us, for staff as well. We have strategy and design teams at all levels of the organization, and we ran last year 46 internal training programs on brain science, management skills, case management certifications, mobility mentoring certifications, which are our special mobility counseling certification, data collection and management, and 1,000 other things. Financial management, computer skills, tons of them. This woman on the left is a graduate of one of our workforce training programs. She is speaking to a subcommittee at the State House. We have a Voices Action Council where we train women to take their own public policy issues and bring them to Beacon Hill, to our Capitol Hill, to testify, to organize, and to go to DC. She is speaking to a particular bill that's a Pathways to Self-Sufficiency bill. Last year, we had 2 new pieces of legislation passed that changed the way that for-profit schools are regulated, because our women brought forth that for-profit educational debt was one of their biggest obstacles to economic independence. And we learned from them, and because of that, did research that then, coupled with their voices, they brought to Beacon Hill, and the laws were changed about how those schools are regulated in Massachusetts. They got, through their advocacy, $8 million new of housing funding to be spent on self-sufficiency coaching initiatives like what we offer, to be offered to public housing voucher recipients. And the list goes on and on and on, because they have wisdom. They just need to be given skills to bring that wisdom where it needs to go. We invest in shared learning at all levels, and that upper level, this is a Disrupting the Poverty Cycle conference. That's John Padilla's back right there that you see in the lower left-hand corner. This was a conference that was designed to share learning between programs and policymakers and funders and families about how you create change and disrupt the poverty cycle. And in the upper left-hand corner are families, and in the right-hand corner is Harry Holzer, a famous academic, labor economist. And in the left-hand corner, a bunch of people like John Padilla. And in the right-hand corner are board members and staff members of mine and speakers, everyone learning together. Why bother? Because when everybody's learning together about the same things, shared learning means shared muscle, shared change. So I have, this is a tough time slot, so I'm going to finish it by giving you something fun. Some questions, and then you can have your questions. Question: What did you see in this? What did this show you? What did this prove to you? What did you learn from this?
That a group of people together, working, supporting each other can go really tall. All ages, sexes, everything.
Amazing what people can do together. No question. You can do things together that you could never, ever do apart. Never in a million years. Yeah.
Yeah, I think teamwork, and then also that we just can bring everybody down.
Certainly, this is it. To risk, to do something magnificent is to risk. And risk also means that there can be failure. But what did you notice about the failure that happened? Well, they still celebrated. There was so much joy in the process. So much joy. People need to aspire, and they need to be able to build big things together. They need to be a part of something. And you have to have that framework of shared vision of what you want to build for people to be able to see how they fit in and how they can be a part of it and how they can make it better. But when they fell, where did they fall? On top of each other, so the other people cushion the blow. If you're there together in a shared endeavor, failure happens. But failure is not necessarily failure. Failure is, getting back and trying it again. And the process is a beautiful thing. What else did you learn?
I love the image of the children sort of building the power for
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, amazing, huh? Showing children that it's okay to risk and that, they can be a part of this as well. And what else? Yeah. Wear a helmet, absolutely. Wear a helmet. There were many different frameworks that were tried. Did you see the different combinations of how people built those towers? This is a process called castelar, you saw in the beginning. It's a Spanish rite of building castles out of human beings that actually dates back, as you might imagine, into the Middle Ages. And people have been documented doing it since the 1700s. But it's done every 2 years in a big festival. And you saw, what else did you see that was fun for people? Tribes. Yeah, kind of competition, kind of being spurred on, but everybody sort of there together, and everybody getting a chance to be part of their own thing, but part of a larger process as well. Yeah, and all ages, all ages. Yeah, so I guess what I was hoping was, I'm not the smartest person in the room. Anything I could have hoped that you would have gotten out of that, you did get. And more, things that I hadn't thought of that I'll now use. And I guess I just want to finish by saying that to become a learning organization is to risk and to reinvent and to risk and reinvent and to evolve and to learn, and that the learning can come from anywhere. The learning can come from anywhere. And the important thing is to create frameworks where the learning could be shared in a methodical way, and to create frameworks where the ideas can be tried at all levels, and where the lessons learned you can bring forward and iterate and continue to iterate. And there's joy in the risk, and there's joy in the success, and there's joy in the learning. So, I don't know. Questions?
Yes?
Can everyone hear me? I'm one of those loud voices. I like what you said about data, using data. Everybody at every different level of an organization should understand the data and be empowered and fuel the data. And also your fifth point, which is the continuous development and learning of, well, everybody throughout the organization. At the same time, not everybody in organizations embraces data the same, and I think some of it's probably generational, needs education, needs whatever. Do you have any thoughts on how to cultivate that type of change where people might be more inclined? Because it is work. So you got to put it in to get it out.
Yep.
Any thoughts on sort of that change in your own organization, how you facilitated some of that change with existing staff, et cetera?
Well, I think I think for me, I'm always looking to try to balance the skills and the learning that people have to offer that come from many different places, and to try to incorporate the skills and learning from people who have many different learning styles, learning approaches, and areas of expertise. So, it is the classic building a very diverse organization where the strength comes in, that you've got small ones and you've got big ones in the bottom, and you've got people who want to be going up, and other people who say, no, I'd rather have somebody land on me. So you want to take that into consideration and cultivate people where their strengths obviously lie. But by the same token, you don't want to underestimate the ability for people to grab onto and do things that are antithetical to them. I mean, I can think of one person who wouldn't mind me using her name. Her name is Jeannie Curry, and she's a frontline staff person for us who does what would be called case management, I guess. And Jeannie is a person who is 55 plus years old and has worked in community organizations all her life, and with computers is talk to the hand kind of person. And we do input of data at almost every level of the organization into systems, and we do pulling out and reflection on that data at almost every level. And Jeannie was a person who was very much this resistant person. But we did give rewards. We gave incentives and rewards for people to develop these skills. And I'm going to tell you, Jeannie was a person who won one of these awards and ultimately ended up taking community-based additional courses and came in and bragged about what she'd learned about what you could do with social networking systems and how our families would use social networking systems in a way that was very additive, but started out just almost intransigently resistant. And so you don't want to fight people's nature, but by the same token, as with STEM or other things that we hear about all the time, you don't want to underestimate the capacity for the right environment to create learning and change. Yes, ma'am.
This is essentially a flip in some ways of the same question, but hi.
Oh, that was very loud. Sorry, everyone.
A voice change.
I know.
Yeah.
So thinking about kind of investing in staff, and I think kind of your list of things that you're doing were a lot of examples on kind of a macro level, right? Like everybody has an opportunity to get education. There are all these trainings. We do mentoring Mondays, which I love that idea. But I'm wondering, management is hard, right? Like for your directors or your coordinators who are working with line staff on a daily basis. How do you kind of incorporate this sort of sense of continuous learning with just standard management practices?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, when we set the strategic goals for the organization, what I told you was that these, we're setting goals for did we make more people healthier this year? Did we serve more people? Did they have stronger outcomes? Did we take the outcomes we achieved or the problems we uncovered last year? Did we build out of them to improve them? Did we get good ideas at all levels of the organization? Did we vet them? Did we filter them? Did we fund the ones that we could to build the organization's goals? So when I set the goals that are going to the board of directors to be approved, Those goals are not set by me. They are set by all levels of the organization. So the programs themselves are saying, this year we can get 500 women through. This year we can get this much more savings. This year we can get this many more degrees. This year we can get this much more earnings. And the staff themselves are setting it, and they're setting it based on, you know, these product improvement teams that are happening at the very front end of the organization, at the ground level, being scrolled all the way up. So instead of me saying, we got to cut 5% or we got to grow 5%, what's happening instead is we're saying to everybody within the organization, you're entrepreneurs. You're entrepreneurs. Tell me how far you can get it this year. How far can you get it this year? Let's try. Let's put a stake in the ground. And we're saying the same thing to the women and families that we serve. How far can you get it this year? Let's see how far. We think you can get it further. See yourself the way I see you. We think you can get it further, and trying to push that. It's all pushed in addition by our research and innovation department, which looks at the data and the trends in the data and brings that analysis to the departments to help them think about what they have been achieving and what's realistic to expect for the future. Yeah? Yes? Other questions? Yes, Jim. Uh-oh. No, you're not allowed, Jim. I want you to know something about Jim. Jim Jim says to me all the time,
Work Rewards does this, and Jobs Plus does that, and Family Rewards does this, and they're wonderful.
so you should know that you are an inspiration to me all the time. I mean it. I mean it. So I'm glad to finally be here with you, because I've been hearing about you, you know, like the attractive cousin that has the best job, for a long time now. And you are just as attractive as he said. Yes, Jim.
I don't say it in that voice, though. So I know from working with you, you don't actually think every new idea is a good idea. So how do you strike a balance between encouraging innovative, entrepreneurial thinking, challenging, so on, but maintaining the integrity of, you know, the core technology and strategy of your program? You know, so how do you, you know, in a sense, how do you continue to evolve without losing your essence?
Well, I think that's where the shared framework of change is really, really important. You know, it's really funny when the coaches, the mobility mentors who work in my organization with our frontline families, when they're coaching the families, and the families have situations where they've set goals, and then all of a sudden the boyfriend gets out of jail, and the goals that they set and all they planned on doing sort of gets thrown up in the air because the circumstances are different. And they go to the mentors and they say to the mentors, I can't finish my semester because my boyfriend just got out of jail, and I can't, you know, or I can't stay in this job because, you know, whatever circumstances struck. My mentors call what they do hanging on to the frame. Hanging on to the frame. Basically looking at what the families committed to and what they said they wanted to do, which is driven by them. It's very much a motivational interviewing-based kind of process of them identifying the goals that they want to achieve. And go back to them and say, but what you wanted to achieve was this, and you said you wanted to, and instead of throwing up the hands, what we need to think about is how to get the plan B, how to recalibrate, how to think about the different path that might get you to that same goal, or optimize your circumstances as much as possible. So the framework itself is absolutely crucial. The framework and the theories that drive the framework are crucial. And so what you have to do is you have to look at the ideas and weigh the ideas. And staff will do this with each other, too, in a peer review kind of mechanism, where they will say, no, that isn't really, you know, that isn't really what we do. That isn't the way we do it. It isn't what we know has worked. There's a lot of, when there's shared learning, there's also a lot of shared evaluation and vetting. And that causes the ideas that get through to be ones that are fairly well honed by, is that how we think the work is done best? Is that how we think it can, is it antithetical or is it thetical to what we, you know, what we do and why we think it works? it's that framework that ends up being absolutely crucial, and the tools and the systems that you're abiding by for executing on that. Because it has to be something that isn't, we're not talking about art camp here, where everybody's finger paintings are all perfect, and that's what you're going to do. What we're talking about here is methodical execution on processes of assessment, goal setting, tracking where you are, and thinking about what that implies for the interventions and how they should be developed. And so I think that framework is critical, and I think a lot of it happens in that peer process of the ideas moving their way up to be at the organization and systems levels. So you've had a lot of the same things. You'll notice that the same things I tell you know about are the same things that my staff below me are separately telling you know about. And for the same reasons, you get a pretty consistent, it's like what John said, John Martinez said, about hearing the same thing from everybody. When I did my PhD dissertation, I studied strategy and what aspects of strategy, and one of the things I was studying was what makes some organizations deliver impactful outcomes versus others in a particular construct. And one of the things that was clear in that research was the ability for people at all of these levels to articulate the same thing: what we do, how we do it, why we do it that way, the frameworks.
Yeah, so if I could just follow up, it relates a little bit to the earlier discussion about scaling up and maintaining the core integrity of a model that's demonstrated while continuing to adapt and innovate to fit new circumstances. So, in a sense, you're saying there are certain things in your model that are non-negotiable, that, someone may have a good idea, maybe we should knock out one of these pillars, and you're saying, no, that's non-negotiable. So the innovation is around how to do the model better, or how to adapt the model to some other circumstances, but not change the model. And in scaling up, you often, essentially you're confronting the same question: what is absolutely fundamental and non-negotiable, and where's there room for adaptation?
And that process of asking what is essential and what is not essential is part of that evolution process, because every day we find things that we thought were essential that aren't, and every day we find things that consistently seem to be producing results that we didn't have that pattern of evidence for before. So the nice thing about thinking about product evolution, people evolution, organizational evolution is it forces you, it creates the structural discipline to weed, to pair. And I think that what's really exciting about giving frames to other people is that other people, when we give them the frames, they will say, that pillar isn't important, or we're going to add another pillar, or we're going to replace it with something else. And in that case, we say, okay, tell us how it works. Give us the evidence on it. And when you have hundreds of other organizations that are doing that, in our case, we have a couple dozen now that are doing that, we continue to do it the way we think we're learning, but our learning is accelerated from what we're getting from them. And they suggest things that we never would have thought of, that really helps accelerate. Oh, yeah, okay, we'll take that one and we'll use that ourselves. Or, and it's just at the beginning stages. The cool thing is that we're moving towards shared data as well, and that is only just beginning now, and I think will accelerate things even further because it gives you, those data points that aren't just belief, but are more than belief. Not that the belief is bad. I was telling Nandita earlier this afternoon that one of the things that is interesting to me is that we judge whether an iPod is valuable or not by whether people buy it. And if they buy it because they think it's useful, we deem it to be very, very useful, because lots of people have found it useful. So in our evidence-based world, we look at evidence as, proof of outcomes. Is a framework good based on the outcomes it delivers? But, a framework can be good also if those who are working in the field think it's worth using and think they can improve their work with it. And so I'm I am not discounting the value of data and evidence. It's core to what we do. It is how we work. It's central. It's not something you do at the end. It is core to creating change, I believe. You don't know it's change unless you're measuring it, so it's core to that. But by the same token, I think it's important for us to remember to risk and to let our ideas go and let other people pound on them. Scary. I've been more scared in this job than any job I've ever had in my life. I mean it. I'm not kidding you. You know, when we started doing this work, we said, okay, we're gonna do this work, and we're gonna start working with families over multiple years, and we're gonna do it in an individuated process, and we're gonna do it with brain science framing, and we're gonna do it in a way that is basically they're driving their own change, and we're gonna do it in a way that's expensive, and. And, everybody said, don't do that. Don't do that. That's not good. All those things are bad. Individuate is bad. Expensive is bad. Science-based, who cares? That's not good. You want bed nets. Bed nets are what we want. We want 25-cent interventions that you put over somebody and they solve malaria. Look for those bed net strategies. And I'm working at the opposite end and investing our organization's integrity in publicly failing at something that's just the exact opposite of what people told us we should do. It's been kind of scary. But no gonads, no babies. Find them and use them, What can I tell you? Yes. I'm just trying to follow Angela, I'm thinking I got to do it my own way.
Phenomenal job. But this all sounds fabulous. Learning organization, we want to be part of one. We want to create this, but we're not all executive directors. There are a few here that are, that maybe with their board make this happen. But for the rest of us that are, the sort of mid-level to senior staff, how do we make this happen in our organization? What potential do we have to do that?
So I think that's a really wonderful question. I've been teaching in MBA programs for decades, strategy and innovation in MBA level programs for decades, and I get asked that by my students all the time because most of them are working as mid-level managers or are going to be quickly going into those kind of jobs. And I guess before I answer that question, I'd ask you guys, what do you think the answer to that question is? For mid-level managers, for folks who are not executive directors, what do you think? What do you think the answer is to that? How do you create a learning program? Or, yes?
Well, you can create an oasis of democracy and input in an organization that maybe isn't as inclusive as it would be if I were in charge. That's not the case where I work now.
Yeah, I think that there is a supposition that how many CEOs do we have in the room or executive directors do we have in the room? Okay, so I will ask you guys. There is a supposition when you are the CEO that you have a lot of control over things. Do you have control over everything that you do? No. What are the kind of constraints you operate under? Time. Funders, what they want you to do, policies, what they require you to do, reporting requirements, program requirements. All of us work to a certain degree under constraints that limit our complete ability or our flexibility. We all have board members. There's always some bigger fish up there. There's always a food chain, and those food chains always place limitations on how much freedom of movement we have to create. They always do. But again, in my own research, one of the things I found was that creative leaders take those constructs and they say, okay, I see them, they're there, I'm going to work within them, but I'm going to innovate within them as much as I possibly can. And so mid-level managers can learn from clients and can learn from frontline staff. And mid-level managers can find lots of ways to do the work better if they're inspired to do that. And bright people are often inspired to do that. And they're also often inspired to be champions of change and to try to push change up and manage change up and through an organization. And I'm always encouraging mid-level managers and organizations to do exactly that. If you have strong beliefs and you think you have evidence and you have your 120, 100 IQ points magnified all around you and you are seeing something that should be done, that makes sense, that should be changed, there's nothing to stop you from trying not only to implement it in your own arena, but also to push the change up and out, which is what we all do. I'm doing it, in the systems work that we're doing, and I don't control all that. So, what other questions? You guys look tired. I have done it to you. You know those TV commercials, that TV commercial where the sound is blasting the guy and he's like this? I've done it. I see it on your faces. Other questions? No? Well, I thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
So Matt is going to come up and give us some concluding remarks, and then I believe we are going to segue to our reception shortly thereafter. Thank you, everyone.